Listen to me very carefully, because what I'm about to share may save you months, even years, of confusion, anxiety, and emotional exhaustion. The most dangerous part of your relationship isn't happening during your conversations or the moments you spend together. It's happening in those quiet hours when you're alone, staring at your phone, rereading his messages, trying to decode what he truly meant. After more than a decade studying how men communicate, I can tell you with absolute certainty that there are 7 specific phrases men send that reveal their real intentions more clearly than anything they say out loud, and ignoring them is like ignoring smoke billowing from under your bedroom door. These messages don't look dangerous on the surface. They look harmless, casual, sometimes even sweet. But beneath that softness lies manipulation wrapped in everyday language. And once you learn to recognize the patterns behind these words, you will never be able to unsee them. Stay with me until the end, because the 7th phrase is so common, so normalized, that many women even feel relieved when they read it, even though it's the one that causes the deepest emotional damage. And if you're honest with yourself, that exact message might be sitting in your inbox right now. But before we get to those patterns, there's something you need to understand, a simple truth that will forever change how you read every text you receive from a man. Most women have been conditioned to give men the benefit of the doubt, to soften their words, to reinterpret them positively, to fill every gap with hope rather than reality. This conditioning is so deep that many women stop seeing what's actually being communicated and instead cling to what they wish was being communicated. And the hardest truth of all is this: texting gives a man far more control over your emotions than any face-to-face conversation ever could. When he texts, he has time to craft the perfect response. He can vanish whenever he wants, leaving you anxious and unsure. He can sound caring while acting careless. He can keep you emotionally hooked without offering emotional presence. That's why you feel drained, unsettled, or strangely insecure after certain conversations. Your intuition is screaming something your mind is trying to rationalize away. Because society teaches women that analyzing messages makes them insecure, dramatic, or overly emotional, when in reality this is not paranoia, it's self-protection. And here's something even more important. A man's messages don't just control your mood for a moment. They influence your confidence, your sleep, your focus, your anxiety levels, and your sense of emotional safety. Ignoring red flags will trap you in a cycle of confusion for months, but recognizing them gives you clarity, peace, and power. One of the biggest warning signs is when he sends messages like, "whatever you want, you decide," or "as you wish," especially when you're asking something meaningful. That's not flexibility, it's emotional withdrawal. A man who cares engages, expresses his preferences, and participates in creating the relationship with you. But a man who consistently shows indifference is revealing his lack of emotional investment. Another deeply toxic phrase is the non-apology. "I'm sorry you feel that way," or "sorry if I hurt you." This isn't accountability. It's blame hidden inside an apology. Instead of acknowledging his behavior, he shifts the responsibility to your reaction, leaving you confused, doubting yourself, and questioning whether you're too sensitive. Over time, this pattern erodes your sense of reality, because he protects his ego more fiercely than he protects your heart. And that truth alone tells you everything you need to know. The consequences of this pattern are devastating. Because when a woman spends long enough being told she's imagining things, she eventually begins to believe it, and that belief becomes the foundation of every decision she makes from that point on. And the worst part is that this emotional burden doesn't happen all at once. It builds slowly, almost quietly, until you're carrying the full weight of a relationship entirely on your own. You make all the plans, you start every conversation. You do all the emotional heavy lifting, while he simply drifts along and still enjoys the comfort, support, and affection you provide. And here's the cruel twist. When anything goes wrong, he points the finger at you, because in his mind, you were the one responsible for every decision anyway. Women caught in this dynamic end up utterly drained, wondering why they feel lonely, while technically in a relationship, and the painful truth is that they are alone. The second texting pattern that should make your entire body tense is when he responds to something vulnerable or meaningful with a cold, flat K, okay, or cool. That's not a short reply, it's emotional dismissal in concentrated form. When a man reduces your openness to a single syllable, he's sending a message far louder than the one on the screen. What you're saying is not worth my time, my attention, or my empathy. Real connection requires energy exchange from both sides, so when you offer something honest and he answers with emotional crumbs, he's showing you he's not capable or not willing to meet you where you are. And what's worse is how many women start to shrink themselves because of this. After being met with K enough times, they stop sharing their feelings, stop opening up, stop asking for anything at all, until eventually they're barely participants in their own relationship. That's exactly what emotionally unavailable men thrive on. You making yourself smaller so they don't have to grow. Yet the moment they want something, your time, your presence, your body, your attention, they suddenly find paragraphs worth of words to send, which proves that brevity was never about being busy. It was about you not being worth the effort. This leads into one of the most manipulative patterns of all, the disappearing act followed by the perfectly timed message. He vanishes for days, ignores meaningful conversations, avoids making plans, and gives you just enough emotional scraps to keep you hoping. Then, right when you're finally pulling back, he drops a sweet, thoughtful, or nostalgic text that hits you right in the chest. And instantly, your doubt softens, your hope rises, and your heart opens again, even though his behavior has not changed at all. These messages cost him nothing, yet they buy him time, access, and forgiveness. Women often cling to these moments, screenshotting them, rereading them, trying to convince themselves the connection is real. But here's the truth, words without actions are not emotions. They're strategies. A man who truly cares doesn't rely on cleverly timed texts. He shows up, he makes plans, he puts in effort. And that brings us to another revealing pattern, the "I told you I'm busy" message. When he uses his schedule as a shield, as if your basic need for communication is unreasonable, what he's really saying is that everything else in his life outranks you. Everyone is busy, but people make time for what matters. And the last pattern, the one that makes me want to shake women awake, is when he responds to your legitimate concern with, "You're overthinking. It's not that deep," or "You're reading too much into it." That is not clarity, that is gaslighting. It's meant to make you question your own intuition so he never has to face his own behavior. And the moment you stop trusting yourself, he gains full control of the narrative. They start praising themselves for being easygoing or low maintenance, when in reality, they've simply learned to silence their own intuition to keep the peace. And that self-betrayal becomes their new normal. What's even more painful is how these men eventually twist the narrative, making your supposed overthinking the central issue in the relationship, never their inconsistencies, their mixed signals, or their behavior that created the confusion in the first place. Suddenly, you're the one explaining why you reacted the way any sane, emotionally aware woman would. You get trapped in this loop where you're constantly defending your feelings while he never has to defend his actions. And then comes the fifth texting pattern, the late night "I miss you," the sudden "wish you were here," or the conveniently timed, "then thinking about you." These messages always show up after days of silence or right when he senses you're pulling back. They're not love. They're emotional fishing lines cast out to reel you back into his orbit. They flip the script completely. Instead of him explaining why he disappeared, you end up feeling guilty for expecting consistency, reliability, or basic effort. I've watched so many women reshape their entire sense of what's reasonable because of men like this. They talk themselves into believing that wanting daily communication is clingy, that expecting kept plans is demanding, that wanting to feel prioritized is selfish. They convince themselves they should be grateful for the bare minimum because he's just busy. But the truth is simple. The right man makes time. The wrong man makes excuses. And every time you accept those excuses, you silently teach him that he has permission to treat you as an option. Then comes the seventh pattern, the one so normalized that women actually smile when they receive it. Let's just see where this goes. Let's take it slow. I'm going with the flow. It's marketed as freedom and ease, but it's really about avoiding responsibility. Now that you understand these 7 patterns, you may look back at old messages with new eyes, feeling a mix of anger, clarity, relief, grief, or even pride for finally seeing what was there all along. But this isn't about becoming suspicious of every man or analyzing every text like a puzzle. It's about recognizing the difference between genuine connection and emotional placeholders. Your intuition wasn't the problem. Your longing for clarity wasn't the issue. Those persistent knots in your stomach weren't sensitivity, they were signals. Because real men, emotionally healthy men, don't communicate in crumbs. They don't hide behind vague language, disappearing acts, or comfort-driven half-efforts. They speak clearly, show up consistently, and make you feel safe, not confused. So start paying attention to your emotional response after each message. Do you feel settled or unsettled? Are you interpreting or simply understanding? Does communication feel natural or like a constant guessing game? Because your body always knows the truth before your mind rationalizes it away. If you feel confused, that confusion is the truth. If you feel like you're lowering your standards, you are. And if you're constantly trying to prove your worth, you're already in the wrong story. Walking away isn't cold. It isn't dramatic. It isn't giving up. It's choosing self-respect over self-betrayal. It's creating space for a man who won't give you breadcrumbs and call it effort. A man who won't make you decode every sentence. A man who won't keep you in emotional limbo because he benefits from your uncertainty. The love you want can only find you when you stop settling for confusion, when you honor your worth, and when you refuse to interpret mixed signals as almost love. So the next time he sends one of those 7 phrases, remember this conversation, because now you know exactly what it means. If this video opened your eyes, like to show you care about your own self-respect, share it with a friend who needs clarity. Subscribe for more insights into relationships and female psychology. And hit the bell to never miss powerful tips that protect your heart. Comment your thoughts below, save this video for later, and take control of your emotional life today.